Allan Stanford was rich. Really, really rich. He had more money than you could shake a stick at, or flick your fingers at, or wave in the wind. Allan Stanford was so rich that if he'd wanted to, he could have easily bought me and turned me into his own personal lackey, if that was his choice. He could have done the same to you. He could have bought the entire Microsoft Corporation and turned all of the employees there into his own personal lackeys, if that's what he wanted. He lived in the lap of luxury. He had a bevy of pretty women, an enormous house, expensive cars, fine clothing. When he went out to eat, he ate at a 5-star restaurant. When he traveled, he stayed at a 5-star hotel. Only the best for Allan Stanford. Allan Stanford is a white-collar criminal who owned a bank, and he stole millions of dollars from working people. In some cases, he took everything they had, stole all their assets, left them penniless, left them with nothing, and in 2009 he got to see how that felt. All the money that he'd stolen was in a bank somewhere, and the government froze all of his funds. He wound up with nothing. He got to see how it felt to have nothing. Probably for the first time in his 62 years. In 2009, he ended up in jail. And he'd been there ever since. Until a judge sentenced him to 110 years in prison for what he'd done, for running his Ponzi scheme, his criminal enterprise, his Wall Street white-collar theft, aka Enron. He's just been sentenced to 110 years, and the first time he wound up in jail, he received a beating, a concussion, and became addicted to antidepressants. And yes, having studied in college for the past 3 years, I understand how the sociopathic mind works, and I also understand how much America favors the white-collar criminal like Allan Stanford. The white-collar criminal in America gets treated much, much better than your typical common criminal who robs a bank. Now, let's just assume that Allan Stanford had been a working-class man who robbed a bank. He would have wound up in prison immediately after doing it. There would have been no waiting around, and the newspapers and the television news would have plastered it all over their pictures, the front page, their screens, their headlines would have screamed it for the entire world to see. Had Allan Stanford been your common bank robber. But Allan Stanford, for what he did, was treated, well, slightly better than your typical working class, non-white collar criminal. But for once, he didn't get off scot-free. I mean, I remember when Martha Stewart committed her white-collar crimes, and she received 5 months, I think, approximately 5 months in prison, then let her back out again. And the reason why is because Martha Stewart is rich. had Martha Stewart not been as rich as she is, this country wouldn't have treated her so well. The country favors the rich in most cases, but in the case of Allan Stanford, he's gotten what he deserved. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but I do hope that Allan Stanford enjoys his time in prison just as much as he has up until now. I know he enjoyed that beating, and I know he's going to enjoy the beatings that he's more than likely going to receive. Allan Stanford is proud of what he's done, which is rather sickening. To be proud of stealing millions of dollars from people who put their trust in you. But then again, Allan Stanford has a typical sociopathic mind, just like George Zimmerman, and both Allan Stanford and George Zimmerman are proud of what they've done because they are sociopaths and they're unable to care about anyone but themselves. Basically, neither George Zimmerman or Allan Stanford could care less who they hurt. They just don't have it in them to do so. But at least both have gotten what they deserve, and that's good. Perhaps there's going to be some change in the way things are run in America. I sure would like to think so.